Well, good afternoon, everyone. Pam Mitchell, thank you for joining us again today. This afternoon, I wanted to update everyone on the city's progress in recovering from Hurricane Sandy and also describe some precautionary steps that city government is taking and that New Yorkers should take to prepare for the strong nor'easter that is forecast to hit our region on Wednesday. City workers and scores of agencies and NYC service volunteers will help with partner nonprofit agencies, and together they have just done extraordinary work over the past 10 days to get us prepared for and help recover from Sandy, and they're going to be a very key part of what we do going forward. Early this morning, I expressed my thanks to the more than 100 city sanitation workers in Edgemere and the Rockaways. They've been working around the clock to clear that community of all the downed trees and other destruction that Sandy produced. Hurricane Sandy has taken a toll on them as well. Many of them have had their own houses flooded. Some, along with their families, had to move in with relatives or friends. They're well aware that one of their fellow workers, Damian Moore, lost two small sons when they were swept away in the storm surge on Staten Island 8 days ago. And they know that another one of their coworkers, Michael Lurie, remains hospitalized from the shock he received from a downed wire while clearing storm debris on Staten Island Sunday. Michael, whom I saw and spoke to in the hospital on Sunday, is in stable condition and thankfully is expected to recover. The work that our sanitation department does is difficult and even dangerous under the best of conditions, and these days our strongest are laboring under conditions that are far from the best. They've been working 12-hour shifts for more than a week with a focus on post-Sandy cleanup. To date, they've removed some 60,000 tons of storm debris. And today, we announced that we will reduce garbage collections in areas largely unaffected by the storm to allow us to move even more resources to the neighborhoods that need it the most. If you live in one of these less affected areas, you may or may not have reduced conditions. It's really going to depend on circumstances like the sanitation manpower in your area. There will also be no recycling collection anywhere in the city until further notice. But put out your garbage and we'll get to it. Just we're going to get to it less frequently probably than we have been doing for an awful long time. Heavily impacted areas will continue to receive garbage and debris removal around the clock since new piles of debris are put on the streets every single day. When somebody decides it's time to go and rip out all of the stuff in their basement that was flooded, you get this enormous pile that magically appears on the street, even if we've cleaned the street the day before. So we keep going back again and again, and I think that process will go on for a while. We're going to get this cleanup from Hurricane Sandy done as fast as humanly possible. I don't think anybody could do it better than the best sanitation department in the world. They have a mission that they're proud to carry out, and we should all be proud and grateful to have such men and women serving us. I don't know that the class of sanitation workers that I swore in about 3 weeks ago knew what they were getting into but I know that they're feeling a great deal of pride in being able to make a big difference in this city. I also wanted to thank the General Contractors Association for helping us marshal private contractors as well as the Army Corps of Engineers and other federal and state agencies. They're all working with Commissioner Doherty and the Sanitation Department so that we can carry out this cleanup operation as quickly as possible. After the sanitation roll call this morning, I also visited Rockaway Park to see the damage there and stopped by to check in on some friends whose house was badly damaged and who still have no power or heat. It's a far cry from every St. Patrick's Day parade in the Rockaways when I always stop by their house for some Irish coffee and corned beef. This time the house is cold. They've lost everything in their basement. They have a tiny generator, but they're spending most of their time helping their neighbors who aren't even that lucky. It is a tight-knit community where everybody knows each other and everybody helps each other. And you just look at all of the sand and mud in the street and the piles of trash that keep getting put out, and you realize what a hard time they have. They described to me in intimate detail just how cold showers are, but they were lucky enough to have running water to at least take a shower. And now as to the approaching nor'easter. The National Weather Service has put our city on a high wind watch and coastal flood watch beginning Wednesday morning through late Wednesday night. We can expect winds of 25 to 35 miles per hour and gusts rising to 45 to 55 miles an hour, with the highest winds occurring late Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night. Now, keep in mind, these are forecasts, and forecasts, as we know, change as you get closer to the event. Areas close to shore, they think, will experience some moderate coastal flooding, especially during the times of high tide, which is early tomorrow afternoon, about 1 o'clock, and then later at about midnight on Wednesday. The forecast calls for a storm surge of 2 to 4.5 feet, which, as you know, is well below what Sandy produced, but still capable of producing flooding in low-lying areas. There's also likely to be about an inch of rainfall in the city on Wednesday and Thursday, perhaps mixing with sleet early Wednesday morning and again Wednesday night. So we could have some snow on the ground and certainly some snow on the trees. That makes trees who already have their base flooded more likely to fall over, and that's something that we're really going to worry about. The storm surge also may be a little bit worse because with some wind this time, you have some waves that exacerbate the surge, and a lot of these beaches have had their sand, which has acted as a barrier, eroded. So places that didn't before have a problem with 2.5 to 4.5 feet surge might very well this time. It's all going to make us have unusually cold weather as well. It feels cold. Wednesday morning temperatures will be in the mid-40s, but the wind chill will make them seem about 10 degrees cooler. Wednesday night temperatures will be in the mid-30s. Wind chill will make them feel like the upper 20s. And while winds will diminish Thursday, the forecast calls for it still to be blustery. In light of this forecast today, I'm directing city agencies to take the following steps. Beginning today and continuing tomorrow, police officers will make announcements over patrol car loudspeakers in some areas flooded by Hurricane Sandy that are close to the shoreline and most vulnerable to further flooding. This is being done to make sure that people who are elderly or homebound or who have infants are safe and encourage them to go someplace warm. Police officers will be able to direct people to shelters, and we're working on transportation arrangements for people who will need them. We're also closing all the city's parks, playgrounds, and beaches effective noon Wednesday to noon Thursday. This is for everybody's safety. High winds are likely to bring down more limbs or entire trees, and obviously the waves are very dangerous, and we just don't need to send our first responders into the ocean to save somebody who's being foolish. So stay off the beaches. City inspectors are ordering all property owners and contractors to secure their construction sites and buildings in advance of the storm. All exterior construction work is to cease at noon Wednesday. Now, all New Yorkers should also take some precautions before and during this nor'easter, too. Driving in high winds can be hazardous, so avoid driving during the worst part of the storm Wednesday night from 5 p.m. on. Outdoor items that might be blown around by high winds should be secured or brought indoors. If before, during, or after the storm you encounter any power lines that have been brought down, stay away. Leave them alone. They are lethal. And because the high winds and driving rains accompany this new storm will make the unusually cold weather we're now having feel even colder. Let me repeat what I've said in recent days. If you are elderly or have an infant under a year old or have heart disease or other such medical conditions, make sure you're in a warm place. And if you find yourself shivering uncontrollably, or if you see someone who seems disoriented, these are symptoms of hypothermia, and hypothermia can be deadly. With those symptoms, people need to get into a warm place very quickly. Check your neighbors, especially those who are elderly, to see if they need help. It's really a great thing to just go over and knock on their door. Since Saturday, the city has been providing buses leaving from our disaster assistance service centers. There are a total of 6 of them on Staten Island, the Rockaways in Coney Island, and in the Bronx that can take you to a shelter where you can spend the night safe and warm. In Red Hook today, we've opened a new warming center that will be open 8 a.m. until midnight, and it is 110 West 9th Street. Tomorrow, however, because of the weather, the operations of the disaster service centers will be downsized, but the buses will still be there. Today, as they have since Saturday, volunteers are going to go door to door in areas that are still without electric service, urging residents who need help to go to one of those shelters. And again, this evening, NYPD patrol officers will use loudspeakers to urge people to go where they can be warm and safe and tell them how to get there. There are also more than 200 centers where people can go to stay warm during the day. If you remain in your homes, please, please, please do not use gas ranges or ovens to stay warm. I know it's cold, but this can lead to very serious fires and carbon monoxide poisoning. Better to be cold than to not survive. If you really are cold, depend on the shelter system. It may not be the thing you want to do, but it can save your life. If you lose electrical power or don't have it, be careful with candles. Don't leave them unattended, and don't leave them burning if you are asleep. We keep having fires from this, and it's going to kill somebody. And make sure that you have working flashlights and spare flashlight batteries on hand if your lights go out, assuming you haven't done that already and assuming you have electricity. Now, Con Ed and the Long Island Power Authority continue to make progress in restoring power to New Yorkers who were left without electric service by Hurricane Sandy. We're hopeful that the lights will come on for many more New Yorkers today before the storm hits. As of 11 a.m. this morning, and that's about 3 hours ago, some 91,000 customers in our city were still without electric service. That's down from 115,000 customers about 11 o'clock yesterday. With some 30 to 40,000 out of these 90,000 customers, in other words, a third to a little 40%, the problems are with the buildings they're in, not with the utility company. So even if the power comes back into the area where your building is, work will have to be done in these buildings before the lights go on. And many New Yorkers live in public housing areas hard hit by Sandy, and we have a similar problem with them. But let me once again repeat what happens. Just because the electricity is turned on the street and you see one of your neighbors with electricity, that does not mean you're going to get electricity. We have to get somebody in to inspect the wiring if there was flooding in your basement or where the electric panel is, and a qualified electrician is going to have to do some work or replace equipment before the utility can turn on the power to your specific house or building. So what you're really saying is out of the 90,000, the utility companies are really only responsible for 50 or 60,000, and they're working as hard as they can to get that done. But they cannot turn on the power on the block until they go into every single building. If they can't get in, they cut the wires outside. Public housing, hard hit by Sandy. As I said yesterday, we're hopeful to have the lights on and heat and hot water restored for the majority of these public buildings in the next few days. Installing a boiler is very tough if the boiler can't be repaired in place. We have 14 new generators that we brought online, 28 buildings housing 5,000 people got their power back yesterday. 12 buildings, 1,000 more got their heat and hot water restored. We have more generators that are being delivered. The problem at this point is when we have a generator, you've got to get qualified people to install it and to hook it up. Same thing with the boilers, and we're all working as hard as we can. As to 57 schools that had sustained structural damage, we're planning to locate all students assigned to them to other buildings tomorrow. I'm happy to say that we reduced that number from 57 to 47, and the other 10 will join the group of schools that open tomorrow, and students will go to their regular schools. Students at the other 47 schools should go to the Department of Education's webpage at nyc.gov to find out where they are being reassigned. Tomorrow, the campus of John Jay High School in Brooklyn, out of an abundance of caution, will be closed because roughly a dozen people seeking shelter there came down with what we believe to be a stomach virus. None of them is severely ill. The school will be thoroughly cleaned and then reopened, but we're going to take security precautions as the most important thing here. In areas where electric power has not been restored, the National Guard, NYC service volunteers, and the staff of the Salvation Army will once again today be distributing prepared meals, bottled water, and other essential supplies. There will be 10 of these distribution sites today. They will be open from noon until 4. Tomorrow, they're going to be open from 9 a.m. to noon due to the weather. So remember, they're going to be open this afternoon, but tomorrow it'll be in the morning. Yesterday, we also distributed more than 250,000 meals, 61,000 liters of water, 21,000 blankets, and 8,000 rain ponchos. Volunteers and members of the National Guard reached 2,000 people yesterday delivering meals, helping with cleanup and checking on those who might need extra help. That will go on today as well. Starting today, local food trucks are also giving away free hot meals at 21 sites in the hardest hit areas. A partnership arranged by the Mayor's Fund to Advance New York City. Call 311 to get their location. We have police there to control crowds, but we don't expect to have, we do expect that you'll be able to get the food that is really going to make a difference in your lives. Workers from the city's Department of Sanitation, Parks, and Transportation, NYC service volunteers, and the U.S. Marines are also partnering with the Salvation Army to collect the large amount of used clothing that has been left outdoors as donations in various parts of the city. They're also distributing cleaning supplies. They're making these pickups today to get these things off the streets before tomorrow's storm. Leaving clothing out on the streets just going to get it ruined. It doesn't help anybody. All clothes collected will go to the Salvation Army locations in our hardest hit areas. You can do that, or if you would like to donate clothing, you can, instead of leaving them outside, deliver them to Salvation Army centers. They'll make sure your donations get to where they're needed. You can also donate them to New York Cares, Goodwill, the New York Metropolitan Council on Jewish Poverty, or Catholic Charities. If you'd like to make a donation of food, you can do so with City Harvest and Food Bank for New York City. What we've got to do is make sure that we get any donations inside so that they're not ruined, but also get them from where you're leaving them to where the needs are. Some places we have too much, some places we have too little, and it's a shame. We've got to balance this out better. Remember, cash donations, however, are the most useful because we can buy things that people need, and it's easy to get those supplies where they're needed. Go to the city's website at nyc.gov or call 311 to find out how to donate to Sandy relief through the Mayor's Fund to Advance New York City. Lastly, early this morning I voted, and I encouraged all New Yorkers to cast their ballots. People all around the world would like to have our freedoms, and to keep them and extend them, we have to exercise them. Now, I know many people, including myself, are encountering lines at the polls. Be patient. It's worth the wait to be part of the process. I will say I talked to an awful lot of people who were just so enthusiastic that they had the chance to vote. That was the main topic of conversations. From the reports we've gotten, the Board of Elections has run into problems, including late delivery of machines to some sites and late openings. Also this morning we learned that the board failed to secure enough fuel for generators at least one poll site. When we became aware of it, the Department of Education did deliver fuel to that polling site. In addition, the governor's office asked us to provide food to poll workers at temporary polling sites where there are no restaurants or delis nearby, and we are doing that. If these were the only problems the Board of Elections encountered today, we should consider ourselves very lucky. But unfortunately, based on its history, that is not likely to be the case. Before taking questions, let me just summarize today's announcement for our Spanish-speaking New Yorkers. Viene una nueva tormenta mañana con lluvia y nieve, y les queremos avisar a todas las personas más vulnerables en las comunidades devastadas por el huracán que tiene que ir a áreas más seguras. And with that, we'll be happy to take some questions. Yes, in the back, Miss.
Do you know which specific poll site you referred to, one that lost power, had to have?
No, I don't.
And do you know of any other problems that the board has encountered? We're hearing that, there's sort of excessive lines, more so than usual.
Well, I can tell you that where I voted this morning, the poll workers could not have been nicer. They really were trying. But the system that we now have in place, instead of you going to one place to get your card and then into a booth, you go to one place, you get a folder, a card, a ballot, then you have to go to another place to fill it out while people can look over your shoulder. Then you've got to go to another place to stick that piece of paper into a scanning machine. All of the crowds, it's hard to get around. Nobody knows where anything is. It is about as inefficient a system. Everybody I talked to kept saying, what is this? A lot of them had not voted in the last election where we had some of these machines because it was a small election. They were just stunned, and they kept hearing, what's this, a third world country? We did have machines, incidentally, that worked. They worked fine. You could go in, you closed the curtain behind you, you pulled the levers, you pulled the lever. I was told that they couldn't get parts to repair them. You call a company will make the parts you need. That would have been simple, and we wouldn't have had to spend any more money. And then there's the problem of how the results are reported. In the olden days, you looked at the number, you had 2 or 3 people look at the same number, make sure you wrote it down accurately, and called it in. Now, unfortunately, there are papers that come out, and they have to cut them with scissors and paste them and staple them together. They can get lost. They can get mixed up. It is just a nightmare, and it's really hard to understand in this day and age how you could do that. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, in light of the approaching storm, are you, although it's not as severe as Sandy, are you recommending the people in the outlying coastal areas?
We are going to go to a few very low areas where normally you would have flooding and try to evacuate people those. But we're not ordering a general evacuation from Zone A. The forecast here, if it hadn't been for Sandy, there would be an OEM puts out an announcement, flooding in low-lying areas, windy conditions. But number one, people are more sensitized. Number two, the danger is a little bit greater because you have trees that have had an enormous amount of water around their base. And if we have snow, wet snow, on the trees, that brings down trees because just the weight of the snow. And also some of the sand that had acted as a barrier before has been washed away. So even though it's not anywhere near as strong as Sandy, nor strong enough in normal times for us to evacuate anybody, out of precaution and because of the changing physical circumstances, we are going to go to some small areas and ask those people to go to higher ground. And it's scheduled to go from really 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon to midnight tomorrow night, Wednesday noon to Wednesday midnight, basically. That's when the 2 storm surges would take place. You have a high tide every 12 hours, roughly. Sir?
Mayor, there's still long gas lines all over the city. Do you have any update on when that might be relieved?
You know, there's some numbers we're investigating. There are some theories that not that many gas stations are open. We would have thought by now there'd be enough supply. Partially, gas stations can't open until electricity comes back, but in most areas, or in many areas, it is back. And there is gasoline that keeps coming in, but the theory, I guess, is that we've started to stockpile so much and people have rushed to fill their tanks, and some gas stations are closed with plenty of gasoline in the ground, but you can't get it out, that's contributing to it. You would expect it to go down. I would have expected it to go down by now. But at some point here, you'll just wake up and it won't be much of a problem. We are doing everything we can. There are still some terminals that have damage. I think the refineries are going and the main pipeline is going, but the total supply isn't what you'd like, and the ability to distribute it isn't what you'd like, and the demand is higher than what you like. All small amounts, but they combine to make it another day without gasoline, and once people think there's not a lot of gasoline available, that's when they go and fill up even more. So it's one of these problems that compounds itself. Yes, miss?
Could you
just identify who you are? I'm sorry for everybody.
Sure, Jen Peltz from the Associated Press. Could you update us on whether there are any developments in finding housing, as you made that appointment for yesterday?
We are, number one, working on trying to get electricity and heat for NYCHA housing. That's 20,000 odd people, and if you don't have to find alternative housing for them, it makes the problem more manageable. Number two, as you get more electricity back in some of these houses, then that reduces the amount. We're still coping with the real issue of how do you get electricians with equipment that might come into short supply into houses, so when Con Ed and LIPA bring back the power, you can take advantage of it. At the same time, we are investigating all sorts of alternatives to move people, but as of yet, the guy that's working on it's been there less than 24 hours. Yes, sir.
There's a lot of talk about preparing for the next storm. When will we hear more concrete ideas about that?
I couldn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
Oh, there's a lot of talk about preparing for the next storm,
Right.
if there's another big storm. When will we hear more about the ideas about that?
Well, that's what I just went over. I thought, what you...
Like next year?
Oh, next year? We're worried about this year. Look, I think there's plenty of time to worry about that. I think there's just no question what's happening here. The air is warmer and it holds more moisture for storms, and the ocean is warmer, and that's where storms get their energy from. And so storms around the world have become more powerful, and also droughts have become more extended, which is what you'd expect as the moisture goes to different places. But that's all for a more long-term thing. I think the level that we are dealing with here, we've got to get through this one and get prepared for another storm like this. You're not going to have any big solutions in the next year. Something like some of the proposals would take many, many years to go through study, and I don't know if they're really possible. Miss?
Quick update there.
Yeah.
The location of Board of Elections didn't have the fuel. The generators is the large tent in the Rockaways.
Large tent in the Rockaways.
Is anybody going door to door in public housing to check on people?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, we have volunteers doing that. We try phone calls, which generally don't work because people's cell phones have stopped working. They've run out of power in places like that. But we are knocking on doors. We're putting leaflets under the doors. There's police cars with loudspeakers. Sometimes you just bang on the door and people just don't answer, even if they're home, and you don't really know whether they're home or not. I get one more. Yes, sir.
Mayor, the anger that's been directed at you and the city, in some cases, for the storm's response, how much of that do you think has merit? How do you interpret that?
I'd love to tell you it had something to do with creating storms or preventing them. I don't.
So,
I do not see very many people criticizing. There are a handful of people, I'm sure, and if you read the press, you think they're everybody. But I walk streets every day, as does the rest of our staff. And at first they were talking about how great the fire department was, then the police department. Now their focus is how great the sanitation department is. There's always somebody who screams, I didn't have coffee for 24 hours. What an outrage. But for most people, they understand we're in this together. They see people trying to work. They understand there's no easy answers to some of these problems. To some extent, those that don't get aid right away get more anxious, disaffected, tired, irritable. I certainly would be, and you see that. You can't let that get in the way, however. What I'm trying to do is to, number one, try to reassure people that we are doing the best we can, and that we understand the problems, and we're trying to get a handle. If we were going to bring in trailers, how many do you need? It's hard to get some of these numbers, and we're working on that, and that's why I brought in this new guy, and Brad Gill, and that's why we also appointed a commissioner for each of the boroughs. The second thing you've got to do is make sure that the people who are doing the work feel that they are appreciated. And I spend a lot of time shaking hands. I was at 7 o'clock roll call, the sanitation department, just to say thank you. You can't talk to all the sanitation workers, but they'll read that I went to one garage, and that sort of, as I said, the sanitation workers that I talked to this morning, many of them had lost their houses, or at least got flooded out, and their families had to move, and yet they're still there. The guy that got electrocuted the other day, his parents were being moved up in Westchester someplace. They sort of got forced out of their house. His house had been flooded out, and he was still working. And so to say thank you to the cops and the firefighters and the sanitation workers and all the volunteers, teachers who are going in. Our number of teachers that are absent today is very low, or yesterday. They're there, and they're trying to make do. It's not easy. You can tell me all you want about how difficult the problems are. I can look and see the things that are going right. And there's a handful of people, those who were most vulnerable right along the coast. They've got the biggest problems long term. And as I said yesterday, my great concern is not for the vast bulk of the people, because we'll get that back, and we know how to do that. It is making sure that people don't forget about those who lost everything, can't go back, or had a death in the family, or have lost their job. that's and we as a society, we tend to forget pretty quickly and go on to the next thing, and I'm determined that we're not going to do that. And can you restore a life? No. Can you restore somebody's memories and all the things they lost? No. But, for example, cleaning the streets, you can say, why is it so important? Well, number one, because then you can get around to go in and fix the other things, the power or whatever. But also, that's what people see. And if they see nothing being done, if it looks like they're in, a World War II bombed-out city, they lose all hope. If they, on the other hand, they see people working and cleaning and going on, then they have the hope, and then they do the job. So, last question, sir.
Mr. Mayor, there have been a number of proposals to make alternative generated power mandatory at gasoline stations to eliminate this. I know you've had to put like a police officer at every gas station. So what do you think of that? It would be not much in cost, is what the experts are saying.
It's worth looking at. None of these things are quite as straightforward as everybody thinks, but it's certainly worth looking at. You had a real question.
Could you tell us a little bit about which areas you're going to be sending the police and loudspeakers to tonight? Maybe we could let people
all along South Shore of Staten Island and the Rockaways, basically. Those are the people in Zone A. If you live in Zone A, that's what we're going to try to get to. So that's as good a way. And most people, I don't know, many people know that they're in Zone A because we talked about evacuations from that time in the Zone A the last time, which we're not doing.
Everyone in Zone A around the city?
No, I said very clear. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. There are a handful of low-lying areas in Zone A where we'll try to get people to leave, but we're not encouraging everybody in Zone A to leave. You want to answer?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we're also, DEP our Department of Environmental Protection is going out with the Army Corps of Engineers. We're actually looking at some of the areas where beaches had been eroded. And so Zone A, of course, is where you start, but there were some areas just outside the zone, Howard Beach and so forth. We're going to be looking at all the areas that were impacted where you could have had a change in the coastline that could potentially be more vulnerable. And those are the areas we're going to focus on.
Let me add one other thing. Commissioner Kelly has managed to scrounge up an awful lot of these lights that you see, a generator and a pole and 4 lights to give people in areas where there is no electricity some confidence. The streets when they get dark, everybody gets worried. The police are out there protecting us as they always do. We've seen a slight increase in burglaries and overall crime. In times like this goes down. I think last week we had only 1 murder. The Department of Health and Mental Hygiene is checking every place to make sure that we don't see an outbreak of viruses that can spread from one place to another. There's normal stuff in schools and that sort of thing. Kids come down with the measles, the mumps, and all that. But so far, there's nothing that we are worried about. And the schools, we're very careful on cleaning them as we move the shelters out and bring the kids back in. So the good news is school tomorrow morning. I assume you think that's good news. The storm is basically going to be sometime mid-morning tomorrow, late morning into tomorrow evening. Parks are closed from noon to noon, Wednesday to Thursday. But even if you're outside of a park, we've had too many people killed by limbs coming down. Trees, when there's this much wind, this much rain, and even little snow are lethal if you are unlucky. And we'll update you when there's something else more to say. Thank you.